The Total War series has come a long way since the basic overworld maps and ground level RTS mechanics of the first Shogun Total War. In 2016, we got our first look at the deal between Games Workshop and Creative Assembly with Total War Warhammer, and what a success it was. Then, just over a year later, in 2017, Warhammer 2 released to even bigger hype, as fan favourites like the Skaven and Lizardmen were introduced along with the long-awaited reintroduction of free-for-all battles. Yet, after a long break and a few delays sprinkled in here or there, Total War Warhammer 3 is finally upon us. After spending over 40 hours with it in the last couple of weeks, playing through full campaigns and numerous multiplayer battles, finally I can give my first impressions, what I really think, because Total War Warhammer 3 is finally here. But is it any good? First of all, let's get the basics out of the way. This is a first impressions, yet if you played any of the other Total Wars, especially titles based in the Warhammer world, you're going to be straight back at home here. Essentially, the core is very similar to everything that came before, but with some notable changes that take it to a newer level that most didn't quite reach previously. It comes as no surprise to many that the third iteration in the trilogy has a massive focus on the Chaos factions: Tzeentch, Korn, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. You're also going to find the legions of Chaos wandering about, a mix of many of the Chaos troops together, but they're just more of a pain in your backside than a real big player in the campaign itself. Furthermore, moving away from the extreme Chaos, players are now introduced to the Kislev, Cathay, and the mighty Ogres, a personal favourite of mine. A note quickly though, the Ogres are a DLC faction, but can be gained for free if you've already pre-ordered the game, or I think if you buy the game within the first week, you actually get the Ogres as well. So many people will be also able to experience them. Despite the new factions, you're going to find that there are many old faces returning in the campaign of Warhammer 3, especially playing as the Ogres or Cathay. Much of your territory and therefore battles cross with the Orcs, Skaven, Dwarves, or Lizardmen. Just something to keep in the back of your mind, as we'll eventually hopefully get mortal empires linking all three games into one massive map and battle to the death. But let's take a quick look at what the factions themselves offer up. The Tzeentch are terrifying creatures, pink horrors that pelt your troop with laser focus. You've also got the blue stupid balls that look kind of similar. They run rings around pretty much anyone, and might I mention can also fire disgusting sludge at your face. A lot of the Tzeentch armies are focused on disposable units. However, the Tzeentch are very deadly from what I've found to factions such as the Ogres. These guys are of course known for being powerful but not wearing that much armor. Therefore, the Tzeentch who have low armor piercing but fast firing can cut through even some of the strongest ogre armies. The Slaanesh are, well, sexy looking lobster-handed women. They charge into battle at great speed and should not be taken lightly. Before you know it, they'll be at your front line with their fast shock lizards or Darth Maul looking fellas. The Korn faction are, well, it's the Korn. They're basically if someone based a faction on the Balrog from Fellowship of the Ring. And finally, when it comes to Chaos, you can have the Nurgles, the most disgusting pill-popping laddies that lumber so slowly into battle, just get some arty, counter them easy. But they use brutal poison attacks and perhaps some of my favourite designed units, most notably the Great Unclean One with a big mouth on the front of his belly, or the Nurglings, who do have some fancy-ass cheerleader stunts as they head into the fray. Oh, look at him. Yes, he's so cool. Looks like he's pissing himself, but I think it's just mouth leakage. Chaos aside, Cathay are based in ancient China, using a lot of magic and bulky dragon emperors and empresses. These heroes can be incredibly powerful on the battlefield because, well, they can turn into literal dragons and breathe fire. Holding the gates along the Great Wall, or Bastion as it's referred to, is a must and makes for some brilliant large-scale sieges early on. The trick for Cathay is balancing all the units and buildings in the faction, each being assigned either a yin or a yang value. Getting a match of both will bring balance to the faction. Giving buffs, or on the battlefield, having yin and yang troops side by side help with things like boosting their armor resistance, morale, or even faster reload speeds for artillery. Speaking of artillery, whoever came up with the junk ships and the fire artillery with Cathay is a genius. Those things are actually brutal. Oh, so much power. So little FPS. This game destroys the 3090. The Kislev race are very much focused on a mixture of Norse and Russian influences. A lot of infantry and winged cavalry with the odd terrifying polar bear chucked in there when needed. I haven't had much time with these guys, however, apart from the odd battle, but the unit design, especially that ice bear, oh, is it beautiful. I took one of the nicest screenshots I've ever taken in a Total War game with the Kislev. And then we have the ogres. Oh my, those beautiful ogres. Spending over 25 hours with them in a campaign, I adore these guys. Needing continuous supplies for meat to keep their armies afloat. This can either be gained through buildings or even just eating the enemies you slay on the battlefield. Ogres have a unique campaign structure with a big focus on camps rather than cities. These are smaller settlements that can be placed within your region and give players access to the higher level of troops, such as the brutal Stonehorn, giants and lead belchers. One of my favourite, because they're literally ogres holding cannons. What more could you goddamn want? But factions aside, the campaign for Warhammer 3 has a few new features to get the player interested. Well, if we're talking about the main game mode, you see, there are a number to choose from. You can defend the Great Bastion with Cathayan against the Chaos. It's pretty fun. However, the main campaign itself that is unique to Warhammer 3 is Realms of Chaos. Players must head into portals that open into the 4 Chaos realms, fighting their way and completing missions to gain the final rune needed. Once all 4 are collected, victory across the campaign is obtained. Once portals open up, they will start causing corruption in your land, making people very, very sad. Soon, if you leave them, an enemy agent will spawn, coming to scout out the surrounding places that they are looking to invade. If you leave these portals even longer, of course, corruption will build up, but also enemy armies will start to come out, and they are brutal. So you need to take an army, go over to the portal, and close it. In closing it, you'll fight a little battle, but then that rift will shut. No more can come through. However, the main aim of the game is to complete all 4 Chaos realms, so if you have powerful enough armies, don't close that portal. Get right in there. Each realm having its own unique way to conquer, with a final battle coming in at the end, fighting different waves of enemies before taking on a final boss. There is an exception on the Zinch realm though. They have their more brutal way of doing it by just sending wave after wave of army as you try and make your way through their realm. I love the dynamic of having portals open and a set amount of time to complete these realms, as other factions also try and do the same, often running into them whilst you're trying to get that rune. It also adds a real sense of urgency in the level design. Oh my god, the level design of these Chaos places, I'm speechless. I mean, look at the Nurgle final level. Look how cool this looks.
I have to say, these fucking settings. I mean, this is way cooler than Korn's, I think.
Yeah, there's just pus coming from everywhere. It's just like, if you've got trypophobia, you're gonna fucking hate this map. Because there's just like teeth and eyes and like holes and everything.
No, oh
my god, there's penises under the map, James.
Oh, there are in fact vast quantities of penises under the map.
I know how they feel. The campaign itself also has some fantastic new additions. Now you can have up to 8-player co-op. Yep, I said 8 players. This is because CA decided to make the turns simultaneous. No more waiting for your friend to finish their turn. Now you both go together. And the game only pauses for confrontations or battles, which is fine, I guess. I mean, look, if it means that we can get more players into a co-op, I'm all down for that. And I think it is probably the better way of doing these co-op campaigns. But this system of simultaneous turns isn't without its flaws. The game will be pausing quite frequently, especially early game, as players get in confrontations with other armies or go to siege their initial cities. Even if they decide to auto-resolve battles, the game pauses for everybody whilst that player decides what they want to do. It's fine for 2 players. You'll be pausing for a few seconds every few minutes or so, and you know, if you're chatting with a mate, it's fine. Even up to 4 players, which we tried, was a little frustrating with the constant pausing, but it's still better than separate turns. Yet I can imagine that any more than 4 players in a campaign, God forbid, the max of 8 players all at once, could be unbearable, especially if you're not physically talking to the other people in your game. Not only does it pause what everyone's doing every time someone goes into a battle screen, but if you're talking to another faction in diplomacy, upgrading your hero, or in the research tree, even if you're moving an army, the game will pause and thus cancel whatever action that you're doing, meaning that sometimes you have to redo many moves or open up menus multiple times as they're cancelled when someone else goes into the battle prep screen. Look, hey, as I mentioned, what is the other option? Go back to 2-player co-op, or even worse, peasant single player? Ugh! I think not. If it's the only way to get more than 2-player co-op, I think it's probably the best solution. Despite the praise I've given on my first impression of Warhammer 3, the game isn't without its flaws. The Chaos Realms can be kind of unbalanced, especially the Tzeentch, who use portals that randomly teleport you to separate islands. They are the only way of getting around. But sometimes the AI will be able to pick the exact right portals to get to the end of the realm and sometimes jump in front of you to get the rune and then close the portal. It's kind of infuriating. Currently, also, there's been moments, at least playing as ogres, where the camps that I mentioned, they start pretty undefended. You can add troops, but initially, they're going to be very easy for enemy armies to take out. Also, they're your main source for a lot of your good troops and gold, so you really want to keep these things alive. Yet, not only did I experience this, but also my friend James, who played the ogres in our second campaign together, saw that sometimes an enemy army could just phase through your army. An army that you would have thought would block its path. Then that enemy army, once phased through your army, would go on to attack your undefended camp. Yeah, that was next level anger inducing. The AI, of course, I don't know if I can say worse than usual, but it definitely feels like it. Let's just say it's on Total War's usual form. In other words, it's still kind of bad.
Well, that one's broken and it's stuck on...
It's stuck on
Oh, God. Warhammer. Just finishing off my German.
Funniest shit I've ever seen.
Especially ranged troops, often being ordered to attack certain units, then just running in the opposite direction. And I know what you're going to say. No, skirmish mode is not turned on. This happens so many times. Also, with melee troops, once they're caught up in combat, forget any switch in order or direction, as well as sometimes just running the complete wrong way when trying to chase down individual units that flee from the battlefield. But after all this, what are the best new things in the new game? Well, it goes on without saying, but these are perhaps the best looking units in any Total War game. The design and detail of all of them is incredible. Sound design wise, everything is on point. From the UI button clicking, giving you that epic booming sound when any button is selected, to the screams of chaos demons charging into war. Ogres as well, oh my god. The names, they must have had so much fun designing this faction. I mean, you've got Mr. Orc Spanker, yep, that's actually a name in the game. Greasus Goldtooth, who is the Lord of the Ogres. Every time you click on him, it says, Greasus is shockingly obese. That gave me a good chuckle. Even some of the heroes of the ogres have attributes like flabby, which give your army more mass. I can't lie, I've never related to a Warhammer universe so much. The Bastion in the east also makes for some incredible battles. You really get that sense of an indestructible fortress with fire tower after fire tower, lighting up anybody that walks nearby. Cathay junk ships are one of my favorite units, along with the Terracotta Sentinels, who have some of the best animations in the game. Overall, it's a masterpiece in world representation within a fantasy video game. I think Total War Warhammer 3, at least for me, so far not only holds up to the other two in the trilogy, but may just be my favourite. That could, of course, just be because it's new, and I know some people aren't too happy with the Realms of Chaos campaign mechanics, but for me, it's never really been about the missions or the loose storyline that they've tried to add in. It's about the battles, the more sandbox campaign styles, the unique unit designs, and the skills and abilities that these fantastical creatures and heroes can use on the battlefield. And Total War Warhammer 3 does these things amazingly. I think additionally having the excitement of the Mortal Empires campaign off in the future, eventually going to link all of these three games together, will make for one of the most content-rich packages that we've ever seen. And I'm not just talking about in the Total War franchise. What a brilliant addition to the franchise. Not only making up for the wait, but also getting me excited. Excited for where they're going to go with this IP in the future. The Warhammer Fantasy Trilogy is complete. So that begs the question, what's next?